Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, has hinted that land and sea borders could only reopen after they met satisfactory risk assessment modules. Listen to him.
What the president does is to receive advice and examine the advice on our ability to mitigate the risk for everything we do. In the case of the international airport, the advice and the processes as have been outlined by the Ghana Health Service, Ghana Civil Aviation, or Ghana Airport Company Limited and the Aviation Ministry give him reason to believe that the risk is well mitigated and can be contained. Indeed, His Excellency the President himself did not just take their word for it, but he came here himself on a visit yesterday and was taken through the entire process. And there's that conviction that the various layers, including the fact that you do a negative PCR test before you board, provides us with some very significant comfort that the risk can be contained. Government continues to examine, for example, the testing regime in our neighboring countries and the levels of confidence we can have in those as part of measures to examine how the land borders and the sea borders can also be opened. So at this stage, because we have confidence in how the international airport, its systems, and the risk levels can be managed, that is why this has happened. When we get to a point where we are confident that for the land borders same can happen, a decision will be made there. You are aware, for example, in the case of students going to school, because we are not convinced that pre-tertiary, the kind of mechanisms that are being put in place will be able to protect our children. The president has elected to terminate the academic year and ask that next year the curriculum be adjusted to reflect that. So every decision he makes is based on a risk assessment of how well the risk can be contained. And if he's not convinced, he won't move there yet. That would be the reason. I don't have question, no. Enya chacha na yetu. The aye yebiano. Yedigun senieni esusu.
Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah there. What do you make of the fact that land borders, land and sea borders are still closed?
Yeah, I think that it's a step in its right direction because of the monitoring. Before the land and sea borders will be open, then we should be sure that we have the machines there as well. Even if we cannot do the PCR test, at least the antigen test, we should be able to do it at the various point of entry.
Okay, let's talk before we go. We'll wrap up this conversation. Before we go, let's talk briefly about the this standing feud between Nigerian and Ghanaian traders, which is gradually escalating. Over the last week, we saw a statement from the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Information Minister, and his counterpart here in Ghana, Kojo Nkrumah, has a list-by-list response. What information are you picking up within those circles?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I have seen the letter from the Honorable Lailai Mohammed, the Information Minister for Nigeria. I mean, he is very clear that he has described what is happening as an harassment to the people of Nigeria. You see, this problem is a matter of institutional failure in Ghana. How do Nigerians get their registration certificates in the first place? How do Nigerians end up renting shops? Most of the buildings that they have their shops in are not theirs. They rent it from Ghanaians. Now, some of them even employ some Ghanaians as well. We work with them for some time. Then we now come back and say they don't have the appropriate documents. Why didn't we check their resident permits in the first place before even allowing them to register? Some of them even have TIN numbers in this country. So we need to balance the two. We need to balance the two. If you go to them for revenue, some of the assemblies go to them, levy them, take some taxes and stuff. If you go to them for money, you give them receipts, they have it. On what basis will you go back to them and say, look, you should evict your shop? We need to balance the two. You see, the political will should be there. At the beginning of the year, Nigeria took a very bold step. And they said because they want to increase rice production in their country, they closed their border. Gift, I don't know whether you remember. Nigeria closed its borders.
I was there at the Nigerian-Benin border to cover what the situation there.
So if it's the case that Ghana is saying that, look, Ghana is a sovereign state, yes, I admit that we are part of, we are signatories to some ECOWAS protocols. But let's have the political way and say that, look, this is how far we can go with Nigerians. Foreigners, this is how far we can go with you. You cannot register companies for retail business, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. We make it clear and communicate that to the Nigerian government. Look, they are raising very legitimate issues. For example, they talk about the leasehold agreement that we said had expired, and on the basis of that, some Ghanaians went and demolished their property in Ghana. They referred us to the Ghanaian embassy in Nigeria, and that our leasehold agreement with them had also expired, but they never attacked ours. If that is the case, then it's quite unfortunate, because if we know that their leasehold agreement has expired, we ought to have informed them for them to take necessary steps to either renew it or relocate, but not to go with force to demolish that building. If they also decide to retaliate, you know how this will become. But I'm happy that tension has come down, and people are no longer being aggressive. And I'm happy that our information minister also took time to also respond to the information minister of Nigeria on matter of substance, and government through diplomatic means to come in so that all this problem will be thing of the past. Thank you.
Wanda, thank you so much. Wanda Victor Kuto is an immigration analyst. He's an immigration watcher. So he watches, the space. He's been talking to us about what you ought to know if you want to travel. We're hoping to have the immigration service, the Ghana Immigration Service, join us with some clarifications on what you can do as a Ghanaian if you want to travel out, whether you want to travel in. We've not been successful this afternoon with that, but certainly we'll be on their heel. Hopefully we'll get them through tomorrow. So you know what you ought to do. But there's been some very good information. At least we've given you an idea of the countries that are open. We've given you an idea also of what you can do, what you ought to do, the cost that will be borne by you if you intend to travel to Ghana, and all of that. We'll keep the conversation going. Wanda, thank you once again.